Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legal Tech Hub product briefing. I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Director of Content at Legal Tech Hub, and today I'm here with Aniket Sawat, the CEO and co-founder of Threadeo. Hi, Aniket.
Hi, Stephanie.
I'm excited to have you join us today and talk to us a little bit about Threadeo and what you're doing with it in the deposition summary and analysis space. But before we launch in, maybe you could give our audience a bit of a background of how and why you came to found Threadeo in the first place.
Absolutely. So I am a scientific researcher by training many years ago, and I once developed a platform for the summarization and analysis of research articles. And that was an interesting idea that was a little bit ahead of its time because this was 11 years ago, well before ChatGPT and so on and so forth. And what I realized back then was that there's sort of a universal rubric that can be built, and we built that rubric for summarization and analysis of dense pieces of text, whether they be research articles or, as in the case that we're going to look at today, depositions, arbitrations, trials, and other legal documents. And so we came into this space through happenstance because we developed a solution that happened to work very well for the legal space, and that was about 6 or 7 years ago. And we've been in it ever since. And about 18 months ago was when we launched what we like to think is our class-leading deposition summary and analysis tool.
That's great. And that's what I think you're going to be showing us today. So before we go into the demo, maybe you could queue up a little bit what that summarization tool does and give us a taste of what we're about to see.
Absolutely. So unlike other summaries, which you can get from other tools, which are essentially you have like a 300-page deposition, you're going to get like a 10-to-1 summary, which would be like a 30-page summary of all the things that were discussed within that deposition. Our platform goes well beyond that. It goes from summarization and well into analysis. And what I mean by that is that it does three things very well. Number one is for attorneys who want to use the platform, it provides comprehensiveness. So what's in the deposition? Number two, it provides insightfulness. What is important to me as the attorney in order to move this case forward? And number three, it provides actionability. What should I as the attorney do next with the information that has been provided to me? So comprehensiveness, insightfulness, and actionability at a high level.
Well, that's great. As someone who used to do a lot of depositions as a litigator, I'm excited to see it in action. So maybe we should just dive in and have you share your screen.
So when our users upload a single deposition transcript in text format, all they have to do is upload that single transcript. And it's essentially a very simple interface where you just literally upload a TXT file. And then 15 minutes later, you get the two files that I'm showing you on the screen. So there's no real implementation. There's no training. It's literally as simple as uploading to Dropbox and clicking a link in your email to download. Right. And so I'll start with the summary on the right. We'll spend not so much time on it, but this is essentially a page line summary. That's one of the outputs. And then on the left, which is the main output and the main differentiator that we have, is the deposition analysis. So what we're going to do is look at a particular deposition transcript. This is actually day one of the 5-day civil deposition for O.J. Simpson from way back in 1996. It's a public domain deposition, and it has a lot of interesting elements to it, which our system is really good at drawing out. And so it really highlights the quality of the system as well. So on the right, we have the page line summary, and this is probably pretty similar to what a lot of our viewers are familiar with. So you have essentially 3 columns. You have column 1 with the subject or a line of questioning. And so you can see all the different areas or topics that were discussed in this particular deposition. Those are all listed here in this first column. And then in the second column, we have an actual summary or a blurb that essentially, in a condensed manner, talks about what happened within that section, what was discussed. And what you'll see, Stephanie, here is that we're very big on citations. And so every assertion, every sentence has a page line citation after it. So we've essentially eliminated hallucination risk. We've eliminated essentially the idea that this would put something down that is simply not grounded in anything that is not in the transcript. And so that's what we've worked very hard to do. And then on the third column is our key quotes. So what are some of the quotes from the transcript text? And you can see it with the different font that support these assertions here, and that you can also check by clicking on here and then going to that location within the transcript. And you can click back to get back there. So that's the page line summary. This is simply a traditional summary, not with the full-blown analysis, but just something that people are used to, and a lot of attorneys use to copy paste and maybe file their briefings and things like that.
Sure.
On the left is what I like to call the fun stuff. So the one that is actually valuable, much more differentiated relative to some of the offerings on the market. And that's the deposition analysis. So here we have a disclaimer because this actually is an analysis. So it goes into a lot of depth and so on and so forth. All we're saying is that, hey, you're the attorney, you're the final arbiter. Please take these as recommendations only. The table of contents is illustrative in terms of those three items that I mentioned in terms of comprehensiveness, insightfulness, and actionability. And we'll be cycling through them as I go through this particular deposition. So let's click on the first one. And so section 1 essentially has basic information about the case. You have the case name, the deposition date, witness name, and then you have a brief overview. Now, what you'll notice within the overview itself is it's very rich in terms of its content. There's groupings and there's citations for every single assertion that has been made. And so let's just click on this one. So pre-incident relationship with the LAPD, which he describes as generally cordial. So if you click on that, so your dealings with the LAPD were cordial. So it says it right there. And then if I go back, I can go back to where I was. Furthermore, you'll see that it talks about, hey, there were many interventions from the attorney. And so it talks about all of that over here. It talks about witness demeanor. And so it's really going in depth and providing an analysis in a way that this summary on the right and comparative summaries don't actually provide. Further, because it's so rich and because the amount of text can get overwhelming, the system is big on thematic grouping. So for example, there's all this text, but it groups it thematically into these, in this case, four sections, four key points that it identified as being important or relevant to this deposition. And so you have them over here. Then we go into the next section, which is a summary of the testimony. So witness background, their role in the case, their relationship to the other parties. And then following that, we have a chronology. Now, this is a chronology that's built in exactly the same manner, Stephanie, as if I was like an attorney or a paralegal on your staff, and you asked me to go through the entire deposition, and then I write out all the events and the dates, and I sort of tabulate them. That's essentially what has been done over here.
Which I often have to do as
Yes,
a senior
exactly.
assistant.
Exactly. And this might be a good place to mention that for those who've done this, I think you would know that analyzing a deposition in this manner at a quality level that is important and that is relevant for an attorney to move the case forward is actually can take a long time. It can take up to a day's worth of work. And
Mhm.
the outputs that you're seeing are 100% AI generated, and they're basically been put out in 15 minutes. So that's the huge value in terms of the equivalent quality for equivalent to a paralegal or an associate. We like to say expert quality, but done really, really fast. And so for the rest of the analysis, I'll just walk through the quality so that the audience can see for themselves what it looks like. Okay, so we have the chronology, and then we have the witness actions and events, witness actions and involvement as it relates to those events and dates in that chronology. So here's a video that was apparently created, some evidence, interactions, so on and so forth. Then the next section is a topical summary. So taking a step back, what were the topics that were discussed within this deposition? So here are the key topics that were discussed. Here are the witness statements that relate to those topics. And you'll see there's a mapping between the topics in the bulleted list here and over here, and then the witness statements that were made, along with citations for each of those statements. And we can go through that. Then we come to what I would consider one of the most interesting and differentiated and valuable sections of the analysis, which is key points and highlights. And within this, there's a couple of very interesting subsections. The first interesting subsection is major admissions. So here are the important admissions that this deponent made, along with the citations. Here are the impacts of those admissions in the view of the AI system. So this is another example, Stephanie, of where the system goes beyond just summarization and offers an opinion, offers an analysis in the same way that I, as an associate or a paralegal, would be required to provide. Then the next section, at least, and which is my favorite section for at least this deposition, is the contradictions and inconsistencies. So if I am a deponent and if you're cross-examining me and I answer your question one way on page 37 of the deposition and I answer it a different way on page 222, and I do that 5 times, the system is going to call out each of those 4 or 5 times. And so that's what you see over here, again, with citations. It also showcases inconsistencies with other evidence. So for example, the deponent testified that his passport was always in one location, but his companion said that the passport was in a different location. So it's picking up all of these nuances from this roughly 250-page deposition. Then you have impeachment points. So the previous examples of major admissions and contradictions were examples of insightfulness, like the number of aha moments, like aha, oh, the passport seems to be an interesting point of contention. The disguise seems to be an interesting point of contention. This is actionability. So it's like, hey, what can I do to further impeach this deponent in potentially a future deposition? And so here it suggests, it has those impeachment points for suggestion. It also suggests statements or documents that may have angles that you may want to investigate further based on certain contradictions or inconsistencies that may have been uncovered. And so those are listed over here. Then we start analyzing and putting this all together. So what is the significance of all of this? And so it actually provides an analysis in terms of, hey, I as the system believe that there's, here's some supporting analysis around consciousness of guilt, motive, credibility, etc. And then it provides a little blurb on what the impact of the testimony could be. Then we have cross-examination strategy. So taking a step, like a higher level view of the impeachment points, here are some cross-examination strategies or areas where the attorney may want to cross-examine the deponent further. It also suggests additionally further investigation areas. So you're really seeing a lot of the thematic grouping, a lot of the rich insights, and then obviously the citations for each of those. And then finally, we wrap it all up with the conclusion. What are the critical points? What does it establish? And then we have some final thoughts and recommendations for both sides. So depending on who takes this, who is actually uploading the transcript for which to get an analysis, you have potential next step for the plaintiffs and potential next steps for the defendant. And in each case, you can have additional discovery. If applicable, you can have trial preparation points, even motions to file, as listed over here. And those are repeated, meaning that those same subsections are repeated for both plaintiff and defense. And then finally, we wrap up with the appendices, where we have exhibits and glossary. But even this is not just a plain exhibits list. It actually doesn't say exhibit 6 letter. It says it actually gives you the exhibit number and then the title, but also a detailed description of that exhibit and further the context within which that exhibit was either introduced or discussed within the deposition. And so that's, again, a high level of richness of nuance, which you're not going to get from a bunch of other offerings. And then finally, we have a glossary. So if I'm a new associate coming onto the case, I don't have to bother the attorney. I can just kind of quickly read through this glossary and sort of understand for myself what some of these perhaps more esoteric terms mean. And so, yeah, that's our deposition analysis in summary.
Yeah, that glossary is an interesting feature at the end. And so you said from start to finish, when you upload this to when you get this output document, how long roughly did you say it takes?
Roughly 15 minutes. It could be 7 or 8, it could be 20, but that's what you're looking at. It's not real time, but it's really fast, and it's certainly way faster than a human being could do it. Again, while maintaining a high level of quality.
Well, that's great. That was a really interesting demo. And again, as I said, I can definitely appreciate it having worked on depositions before. For those of you who are watching who might have more questions, we're going to be putting a URL at the bottom of the screen so you can find out more about Threadeo or maybe reach out to Aniket and his team with any questions you have. But again, thank you for joining us and showing us that.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was my pleasure.
Yes. And to everyone watching, have a great day.